first off, let's talk about Cersei. She's gone off the deep end. She's become an arch villain now. Jaime is eventually going to have to kill her. Probably not in season 7, unless it's right at the end of it. More likely in season 8. But she's not powerful enough to really pose the kind of threat we need for the final seasons in Game of Thrones. She just doesn't have that much. What she got, the mountain and some troops against 3 dragons and 4 nations that Daenerys is bringing to put the whoop down on her with. Well, she's going to have to get some power from somewhere in order to create an interesting plot. Now, I think there's going to be some more reveal about the wildfire and the pyromancers. I think they're going to come up with some real Archimedes type weapons that might pose some kind of threat against the dragons, but I still think she needs something more. So let's talk about Euron. Euron is our new villain in Game of Thrones. We've always had a psychopathic villain in Game of Thrones. First we had Joffrey, and then we stepped it up a little bit with Ramsey. Now we're stepping it up to Euron. You say stepping it up, how can you get worse than Ramsey? Well, Euron is basically Ramsey with magic, and a lot of magic. He's got warlocks of Forth under his employ, and he has a magic horn that is supposed to tame dragons in the books. He sent Victarion to steal Dany's dragons or to pressure her into marrying Euron. Victarion, of course, is deciding to betray Euron, but we know that Euron has already anticipated that. He already knows what Victarion's going to do, and this is going to create some kind of twist in the end where we see that Euron anticipated that Victarion would betray him, and basically it's probably so that Victarion has to blow the horn himself for some reason, and therefore dies. Everybody who blows the horn dies, and somehow that gives Euron the power of the horn without having to die. I'm not sure how that works out yet, but it's definitely alluded to in the books. Now, in the series, Victarion isn't even in it. You've got Euron, and the people who go and meet Daenerys are Theon and Yara. And they have taken this place of betraying Euron, coming back with Daenerys. Well, all this is just kind of compressing the facts for the series and the pace of the Hollywood presentation. Euron is going to step in a big way very soon, and maybe he'll have one of his slaves blow the horn, but I think it will come into play. Basically, this horn is going to steal one or more of Dany's dragons, and this will create major tension for us to enjoy and brood over and worry over in the next season of Game of Thrones. Now, the other thing I want to talk about with Euron is that he has to be really in league with the others, the White Walkers. This is needed to bring the villainy in Game of Thrones towards the end point. We don't really know the White Walkers yet. He's really given us a lot of information of the people we're supposed to hate. Ramsey, Joffrey, the villains that we see, and I think this is a very important part of Game of Thrones, that he wants to really portray the villain. He hasn't had a chance to portray the White Walkers yet. He's kind of saving it for the last, but the last arch enemy, the last human arch enemy, needs to help tie it all together. Now, there have been a few little hints that the shrouded god or the stranger or the other, the great other, are influencing some of these psychopaths in Game of Thrones. Joffrey's blue eyes, and then later in the play there's a scene where the actor who is playing Joffrey has brilliantly blue eyes. There's a scene in the books where Ramsey seems to be channeling information from the old gods, because he brings a bag along with him with clothes of Bran's and Rickon's before he even knows that they're not going to find Bran and Rickon. So he had anticipated killing the 2 Miller sons instead of Bran and Rickon before He even knew whether they were going to find him or not. How did he know this? Some think that he is getting kind of channeling information from the Weirwoods or the old gods. But Euron is going to really bring that home, and there's going to be no doubt that he's ultimately in league with the Great Other. There's a lot of mystery about Euron's disappearance after Euron Greyjoy's rebellion. He disappeared. Maybe he went to the land of Asai. He's taken poor Theon warlocks into slavery. One of them may have betrayed the other, the one who wants revenge on Daenerys, because he's got at least one of them enslaved and seems like he's torturing this guy. He's supposedly studied a lot of different magic, has a lot of different magic items. He drinks Shade of the Evening, which the warlocks of Porth drink, presumably to make them more magic. And I think that sometime in his travels, he became a unknowing or knowing vassal of the others. Euron has a very similar story to the Grey King of the Iron Isles and the Storm King and the Night's King and Jon Snow, in that he was saved from a kind of drowning by something that other men don't know about. In all these different stories of these ancient kings, first men and such, you have the idea of somebody drowning or turning into a wife or freezing to death, and then a woman with blue eyes and cold skin kisses them or saves them in some way. Or either the drowned god or the shrouded god or one of these gods that can be equated with the Great Other saves them in some way. Tyrion is one of them, Patchface is another. Euron has a story similar to this. He's in a way has been reborn at sea. Nobody knows what happened because he cut out the tongues of all his crew members. But in a type of Odysseus type scene, he tied himself to the mast of the ship so that he could hear sirens singing. And after this ordeal was over, he cut out the tongues of all his crew members so they couldn't tell anybody what happened. This is somehow related to the Great Others. And during that time that his crew members can't speak of, he basically sold himself to the devil. He sold himself to the Great Other, or the Shrouded One. And he is going to aid their entrance into Westeros past the wall. I don't know if his horn also has the power to bring down the wall. A lot of people think that there are ice dragons in the wall. There's a lot of credence to that, especially if you've read The Ice Dragon, George R. Martin's book, that really does seem set in the same world but at an earlier time period and from a different type of understanding. There are also dragons that can be wakened from stone, like Melisandre said, at Dragonstone. This is the place that Stannis occupied at the beginning of the series, and the Maester, who was in his employ, speaks of the great dragons carved out of stone that make up this castle. Now, a lot of people just think they're corbels or gargoyles and stuff, but I've always found it kind of interesting that nobody thinks that those are the real dragons. Everybody thinks they're the ones at the wall. Well, this is the place where the Targaryens first came to live to escape the doom of Valyria. The prophecies say dragons are going to be awakened from stone. This could be the first place that Daenerys sets foot in when she lands in Westeros, just like her Targaryen forebears. So I don't see why that can't be the place where the dragons awaken from. The stakes have to get higher for the last two seasons, the last two books, to be as interesting as the rest. And what do we need for this? We need dragons. I mean, the White Walkers aren't really a threat against dragons. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of them, but we really, for the special effects and for the climax and everything, we need something as awesome as dragons fighting the dragons. and Euron, of course, might steal some dragons, but I don't think that's going to be the climax of the series. I think that'll be more like the low point in the hero's journey. Daenerys will have to do something to get them back. Something's going to happen. But the final battle is going to need to be against dragons versus dragons, White Walkers versus men. Everybody's going to have to come together to defeat this threat, including Jaime. Jaime's probably going to have to sacrifice himself. I'm predicting Euron steals the dragon, but Daenerys gets it back somehow, maybe with the help of several other characters that we know and love. And then he'll bring down the wall. And when he brings down the wall, that might free some ice dragons. I think dragons are going to be also freed from Dragonstone itself, because that seems to be what the prophecy more emulates, or seems to predict, or that seems to be the best translation. I think that dragons are also going to come from Dragonstone, and I don't know if they'll be on Daenerys' side. Because waking dragons from stone seems more in line with Dragonstone than it does from the wall. Though I don't doubt that there may be ice dragons in the wall as well. Or even an ice dragon underneath Winterfell, like some of the theories have predicted.